Refuah Shlema to all who are ill. Thank you, Reva. Over to you for your drosha.
Thank you, Marion. Good. I thought tonight I'd like to take a very special discussion, because nothing in Judaism really is a sermon, or the person, the rabbi, or someone like myself, a lay leader, telling someone what to do. It's more of a discussion. But Miketz, the name of our parasha, actually means 2 long years. And just in the name of the parasha, it's directing us what message to take. And it's a discussion that is had many, many times. Do we have free will? Or is there such a thing as fate, and there's nothing we can do about it? To put it in another way, are we allowed to choose? Or is everything up to a God, a destiny? I'm not sure. Are we born already with labels on our toes, Hilda, that says, you're destined to be a doctor, you're destined to be a prime minister? What is it? This has always fascinated me. And here, in reading for tonight's parasha, I find that there is an incredible discussion by our sages just about this point. And if we look at Joseph, he is an example in Judaism, all the narratives of real human beings like me and you, and the mistakes they made, or the mistakes they didn't make. What was their fault? What was other people's fault? Where does Hashem come in? What is our destiny? So let's have a look at Joseph. Joseph's story is basically about 2 different things. Firstly, what was done to him. And then secondly, a second part of his story is what action he takes. As far as we can see, the only action that Joseph took to result in the hatred of his brothers, the deception of his father, the throwing into the pit, sold into slavery in Egypt, you all know the story. Well, there's only one line in Torah that actually leads us to say, well, yeah, maybe it was his action. And that is the one line that says that he did go to his father and he did speak badly about his brothers and the rest of his family. But then apart from that, which is he was a young boy, and it's a very human emotion, and we've all done that out of fear. Apart from that, we don't hear of one more thing that he does that is good or bad. In fact, the first part, all we hear about is what's happening to him. His father loves him more than the other sons. Hence, they gave him the coat, hence the jealousy. His brothers are envious of him. His father sends him to find them. He can't find them. And yet there's this messenger he meets who points the way. Again, not his own action to find him. His brothers plot to kill him, sell him, etc., etc., etc. But there are no actions of his. Everything is happening to him. And let's think how much shapes our lives of what happens to us and the actual actions we take. So it's extraordinary. Joseph is the center of attention, no matter whether everything is being done to him or whether he's taking action. Really peculiar. So let's see what happens when he does take action. He starts to take action when he gets to Egypt. And he is sold, of course, to Potiphar. And Potiphar, he is sold as a slave. And Potiphar puts him in charge of both the prison and his own household. So you and I know the long story that in his household, Potiphar's wife falls for this good-looking young guy and tries to seduce him. Now, it's very interesting in the action now that Joseph takes, because his words indicate and his actions where his state of mind is. And he actually says to Potiphar's wife, to her, he says, you know something, I can't do this because my God would not like it. He actually refers to God and brings it in. So in a way, yes, that was his action. And then he was thrown into prison. In prison, which is he totally unjustified, was not his fault. He was actually doing the right thing. What does he continue to do? He doesn't sit there and play a victim and say, oh God, why has this happened to me? Are you a just God? I didn't do anything to cause this. No, he takes what he was given. And to me, the most important factor and a lesson to us is that he still, even in those unjust circumstances, works with integrity, with honesty, and he brings himself to the attention of the person as well running the prison under Potiphar. And they put him in charge of all the prisoners. Now, he didn't play victim. Even when these things happened to him, it was through the actions of others. He didn't see himself as a victim. He accepted these unjustified circumstances to a certain or large extent, and he kept on acting with integrity. And most important, he chose to remember God's commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery. He chose to bring God into the picture. So then we get to the long story. If you remember, after being in prison quite a long time, he's asked to interpret the dreams of the butler and the baker. And we all know that story. He interprets the dreams. And the dream, who was it? I think, was it the baker? That he says will live. And the butler, I think, was going to be hanged. But he says and this is where he's taking direct action to be released, to plot his own future. And he says to the baker, listen, when you get out of here, because how I've interpreted your dream is going to become a reality, please remember me. Hey, please help me get out of this prison. And so that was, again, his own action. But what happens? Sorry, it was the chief steward it was the butler. The chief steward did not remember Joseph. He forgot all about him. And in Hebrew, it's the doubling of the verb he forgot, because it's very important, the title to the parasha. And when in the Hebrew a word is doubled in a sentence, it means pay attention. And it means he forgot. He forgot totally. He just didn't even remember. He forgot totally that Joseph even existed. Hence the 2 long years. What did Joseph feel in those 2 long years? He must have felt terrible, but he continued doing his duty. He continued looking after, doing his work, doing it as justly and honestly and hardworking as he could, going beyond duty, even though the future was totally unknown. And his goal, his dream, was to get out of prison and make something of his life. So 2 full years passed, Miketz. Between the attempt and the outcome, something must have intervened. What happened? He planned his release, but he wanted his release very quickly. The steward forgot all about him. But there was someone who did not forget about Joseph. And that someone doesn't forget about us when we've planned something and it doesn't materialize, and when everything seems to be going wrong. But Baruch Hashem, we still keep on acting towards our dream and our goal. God did not forget Joseph. God, and it says in the Hebrew text, when you read it carefully, that God was responsible for putting those dreams into Pharaoh's head. In other words, the universe, that famine was coming. And so What we want to happen happens. And I know you've heard this before, but not always when we expected, or even in the way we wanted it. It comes in the most peculiar ways. And yet, when we look back, maybe years later, we say, well, you know, we'd all choose our own little pechelach. Then they say that, yes, I was meant to be here at this time, but I couldn't see it then. So, although we do have a choice, Joseph had a choice whether to still carry on for those 2 years and act with honesty and treat the prisoners with dignity and justice, or to say, oh, well, this man has forgotten me, to hell with it. No one cares. Where's God? What am I doing here? But he didn't. Because of his actions, because he kept on, God was there at the right time, at the right place. Because had he been released earlier and Pharaoh didn't have those dreams, you and I would not have our history and our patriarch. So God is the co-author of the script of our lives. Isn't that a beautiful saying? And we have to wait sometimes, and sometimes we're caught by total surprise. This is the paradox that Judaism can handle as a religion. We can handle many contradictions. We don't like things to be, we're all fatalists. We've got no choice. God plans everything. Or, oh, well, we're in charge, we can make. No, we don't like those extremes. We like to look at all the options and then see through our narratives and through our Torah what God, what Hashem is teaching us. So Judaism particularly agrees that human freedom comes with a great responsibility, that we're still responsible for all our actions. Would God have been there to create a Jewish nation and a narrative if Joseph had not followed God's commandments and rules? If he'd slept with Potiphar's wife, why not? Who knows? All I know is that my Torah and your Torah and our Torah tells us it has to be a combination, that we are free to choose to act, but then we've got to choose the right thinking and the right action. So just to conclude, up to the point where we actually get the Torah and the covenant with God, with Moses, remember that the universal laws had been given long before. It had been given even before Noah and the flood. And those universal 7 laws are the basis of our 113 mitzvot. But the truth is that special covenant between our Jewish nation and Hashem is beautifully put, perhaps, by Rabbi Akiva. He says, yes, and he's talking about freedom and yet God still being with us at all times, because that is what the covenant promises us, that provided we follow the laws of the Torah, the instructions, the understanding, and we discuss these stories, we can overcome our own mistakes. We can always get that magnificent balance between freedom and responsibility. Even if we make a mistake, we can correct it. In fact, I've said many times, and this is my big love of Judaism, that even at the last moment, it says on Yom Kippur, if someone repents, rethinks, really understands that he made those mistakes and really wants to, if it were possible, to respect people, to take back all the bad words, to take back all the sins. If that's sincere, he's forgiven. And he is as good as anyone else. Now, that's an extreme case. But anyway, let me just conclude with what 2 wonderful sages and rabbis of blessed memory say on this contradiction seeming between free will and God having his say with everything. Rabbi Akiva says, All is foreseen, yet freedom of choice is given. Interesting. Isaac Bashevis Singer put it wittily, we have to believe in free will, we have no choice. If we didn't have the choice of free will, then Hashem wouldn't need anyone at all. He'd have puppets. We have to choose Hashem. We have to choose Torah. We have to choose the right thinking and action so that we will understanding Hashem's teaching. And I will conclude, of course, with another great sage of our era, one I have so much love and appreciation for, is the late Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. And this is what he says. We and God are co-authors of the human story. Without our efforts, we can achieve nothing. But without God's help, we can achieve nothing either. Judaism has found a simple way of resolving this contradiction, this paradox. For the bad we do, we take responsibility. We admit our acts. We go to someone and say, I'm sorry, I was thinking incorrectly. Or we go back and give money we stole when we were poor, whatever it is. But for the good we achieve, when something really happens, we thank God. Joseph is our mentor. When he was forced to act harshly, he wept, he admitted his mistakes. But when he tells his brothers, ultimately, and he asks them to forgive him, and he says to him that his success he attributes to God, and what they did was part of his path. So he helped them forgive themselves. What an incredible example to us. And so Rabbi Sacks says, attribute your success to God. This is how we should live, particularly in this era of extremes, of fake news or no doubt. Let us follow with both our thoughts and actions the path that Torah has taught us. Shabbat Shalom. Back to you, Mariam.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much, Riva. We continue with our closing service on page 580.